Our next and final speaker has served 16 terms in the U.S. Congress, where he currently serves as the representative for New Jersey's 6th Congressional District, which covers most of Middlesex County as well as the Bay Shore and oceanfront areas of Monmouth County. He received his master's degree in international relations at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. He later earned his law degree at Rutgers University and has been admitted to the bar in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Florida. He is the chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee and also serves as co-chair of the Congressional Caucus on Armenian Issues and the Congressional Coastal Caucus. Additionally, he's a co-founder of the Congressional Caucus on India and Indian American and Congressional Caucus on Sri Lanka. Throughout his tenure in Congress, his legislative accomplishments have been geared to the protection and restoration of environmental resources and making healthcare more affordable and accessible. Today, he will be explaining how students can become involved in their own communities and how to become an effective and community-minded leader. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Frank Pallone.
Hi, thank you, Krina, and thank you all. I know that the Business Academy at Sayreville in my district is sponsoring this event today with the Career and Technical Student Organizations. And I'm actually a member of the CTE caucus in Congress, so very, very sympathetic to your concerns and what you want to do in terms of your careers as well. I know that you wanted me to talk about a little bit about Perkins funding, and then also about how to get involved in the community and what it means to be a community leader. I wasn't going to talk for more than maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then maybe we could take some questions. I don't know if that was what you planned, but if it is, I'd be glad to take some questions. We have various programs to help students. Perkins does have an element, like student loans, to help students who want to go to university, but it also has grants to schools for career and technical programs like what you were involved with. And I've always been a big supporter of that. And also of trying to keep the student loan program for college and graduate school, as inexpensive as possible, so there's not a lot of interest when you pay back, if any. And also the Pell Grant program, which provides grants to low-income students. I mean, frankly, personally, I think that students should be able to go to college or technical school and not actually, whether they can afford it or not, which is the case with so many other countries in the world, but not true here. And it's unfortunately getting to be less and less, where a lot of students will tell me, I just can't afford to go to college or technical school because I don't have the money. It shouldn't be that way, and I certainly want to reverse that as much as possible. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that, in terms of, like a lot of people will say to me, well, why should the government pay or help students in programs, whether it's business or whatever? And my response always to that is, look, if every other country in the world is doing that, in other words, if we're in competition with Europe, or we're in competition with Japan, or we're in competition with China, if the rest of the world is providing an affordable education to their students, and we don't, then we're not going to be able to compete. So you could even look at it selfishly and say that, if in the United States, someone who's qualified can't get the education that they need, then that's going to preclude, future leaders who would be excellent from being out there. And then, our position in the world and our ability to compete just goes down. And so, you could even look at it selfishly and say that's why it's important for our government to help, because if every other government is helping and we don't, then we lose. But I also think that there's a human aspect to it that's important as well. The other thing, the second thing you wanted me to say is, how do you get involved in the community? Let me just say this. There are so many opportunities and so much desire for young people to get involved in the community, whether it's politically, in the business community, with nonprofits, with hospitals, whatever it is. all I constantly hear from, I'm 68 years old, right? So all I hear from the Lions Club, I listened to the previous speaker, the Rotary Club, the Chamber of Commerce, the church or the synagogue or the temple, is that that we can't get young people. We want young people, and they're not coming out. I think that the real problem is that many people have sort of lost faith in institutions, and so they don't believe that a religious institution is something that's important to them. They don't believe the government is important to them. They don't believe the Chamber of Commerce is important to them. The reality is, all those things are very important. In other words, if if we're going to continue to have a vibrant democracy, we need young people involved. If we're going to continue to be, again, I go back to competition, competitive in the marketplace, we need young people to get involved. And the same thing is true for the Hindu temple or for the hospital or the first aid or the fire department. Many of these things are volunteer. So we need people, and I think everyone recognizes that. So whatever it is that you're interested in, believe me, there are plenty of opportunities for that. And there's not going to be that many times when you go and say, I want to be a volunteer for the first aid, or I want to help with the Lions, that somebody is going to say, no, we don't want you. I just don't think that's likely, because all these service organizations many of them have had to close the door because they can't get younger people to help out. And it's very easy to become a leader in those organizations very quickly, in my opinion. I mean, if I use Congress, what we're seeing is, more and more people that come to Congress at a younger age, or even if they're not that young, who've never had political experience before. So don't think you have to have a long career or have significant background in any of these things to actually accomplish them. And in terms of what's important in being a community leader, I think the most important thing is to show that you care, and then you have specific ideas on how to improve things. If I could just use what's happening now with the political sphere, what we're seeing in elections right now, because this is the area where I'm probably pretty expert since I've run so many times in the last 30 or 40 years, is that there's less and less emphasis now on who you are, whether you have name recognition, whether whether your father or your mother was a politician, whether or not you even look good, for example, or your appearance. I think people are crying because of COVID, because of the fact that the economy is not good, that they're worried about healthcare, they're worried about so many things because of the atmosphere with the pandemic and economic downturn, that they want to hear exactly what the leader is going to do. They want ideas, they want plans, they want things that are pragmatic. That's what it's all about. And so if you join I don't want to keep using the Lions as an example, but Mr. Brennan was here from the Lions. If you join the Lions and you want to be a leader, or you decide to get involved in the Chamber of Commerce and you want to be a leader, the best way to do that is set out a plan of action that's really going to make a difference, that you think yourself you can effectuate. And then you talk about it and you try to effectuate it, and people will respond and you will become a leader, because you're actually coming up with specific ideas and plans for how to make people's lives better. And believe me, everybody wants that. Even if they don't say it, they want that and they need you. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and maybe if you want me to, I don't know, was it Kamar who introduced me? Did you want me to answer some questions or hear some comments rather than just, I'm a politician, I could talk all afternoon if you want, but I figured maybe we take some questions if that's in order. I don't know.
Yes, Congressman, I do believe that the questions are in order, so please feel free to put some questions in the question pane. I have a question right here. So Congressman, you've been in Congress for 16 terms, and I know that you're the only congressman that I've ever had. How do you stay so consistent in leadership? How do we maintain longevity in leadership?
Well, I think the most important thing is what I said to you. You have to be substantive, and I'm not. I feel like a little like I'm being conceited in saying that, but I don't. I think people don't want to be bullshitted. Maybe is the word. I know you're young. Maybe I shouldn't use that term. They want to know what you're actually going to do to help, and then they want to see if you can actually accomplish it. So, for example, when I last ran in a primary election in July, and everything that I put out was very specific about, what I had done during the coronavirus, what legislation I had implemented, what I had done with regard to expanding options for healthcare with the Affordable Care Act, what I had done to try to improve the environment, put an end to ocean dumping and keep the, providing clean water. I think that's what people respond to now. We also have constituent services, and we're pretty much pride ourselves on the fact that you can call our office even now, even though it's only virtual, and we follow up. But that's, I think, the key, really. I'm not saying, of course, it's important to be out there, to go around and meet people, and to go to events. But I don't think that people are so much worried these days about, whether they see you every day. I mean, for during the COVID crisis, for most part, they only can see you on, virtually. They want to know what you're actually doing, and that's where I think that, by being substantive and describing what you do or what I do in Congress, I think that makes the difference.
Thank you so much. We have another question here. Especially today in today's political climate, I know you've waged some battles in Congress. How can we work with people that we disagree with?
It's not that hard. I mean, unless they're just, totally disagreeable people who don't really want to accomplish anything and just want to make trouble every day. But there's not too many people like that. There are some, but there aren't too many. Look, you can, let's give you an example. For example, right now, we're trying to negotiate another bill dealing with the pandemic, with COVID-19, right? And what I will do is, I may argue for a particular point of view, say, we should have $100 billion more for the providers, for the hospitals, for the clinics, for the doctors in this next 6 months. And we should be very prescriptive in saying that we should have a national testing program that's funded by the federal government, that's run by the federal government. The supplies go through the federal government. Now, the president, Trump, and most Republicans don't agree with that. The McConnell's proposal in the Senate was for an extra 25 billion rather than 100 for the providers, for the healthcare providers. And he doesn't want to have any language. He says it's up to the states. This is what Trump says, up to the states, something like, states' rights type of thing. So, we're probably going to end up with 50 to 75 billion, and we're probably going to have some prescriptive. They'll probably say there should be a national testing and supply program, but the states will pretty much run it. That's not what I want. That's not what I think is best. But we have a divided government, right? The House has a Democratic majority, the Senate has a Republican majority, the president's a Republican, at least until the end of the year. And so that's what you have to do. You just have to basically see, what is it that you want to accomplish? And then you articulate your view, and the other guy articulates his or hers. But then you understand that there has to be an agreement, otherwise we don't get anything done. And that's part of the problem right now. It's been difficult in the larger bill. I deal with the healthcare aspects and the utilities. I'm not dealing with unemployment or direct aid to states. Right now, the big controversy is over aid to states and towns, and also over the unemployment. And but what I'm saying is that that you can strike a deal on those things as well. But it's been difficult because as you get close to the election, it's harder to come to a consensus and strike a deal when you get close to the election, because the natural tendency is to say, well, look, tell people what they want. and then let the election decide what happens rather than trying to work things out. So it's getting harder as we get closer to the election. I mean, just to be honest, but there's nothing that can't be worked out. And that's true in the private sector, it's true in business, it's true in anything. You just have to be willing to do it and not just, take this hard and fast attitude, well, my way is the highway.
All right, and here's a more lighthearted question from May the V. What has been one of your most interesting moments in all of your years being in government?
Interesting moments? Oh, I don't know. It's hard for me to think of what's interesting. I tend to prefer when you ask me substantive questions. Interesting. I don't know. I mean, there's so many things over the years that have been interesting. I'm just trying to think of something that's most recent. I'm very much, I noticed that I'm very much, to me, I'm a history and a kind of a cultural person in the sense that I'm very fascinated with other cultures and people's cultural background. So, like for example, it was mentioned that I founded the India Caucus and that I continue to chair the Armenia Caucus. I very much find it fascinating to see how different people and ethnic groups handle things and their attitudes and their culture. It fascinates me, and I can't really think of anything offhand, but a lot of times I'll be fascinated by the way different people respond to things because of their ethnic or their cultural background. You guys still there? That probably wasn't what you expected. You wanted something more specific or funny, and I didn't give it to you. Did I lose everybody?
No, we're still here. We're good.
Oh, okay.
So one final question for you. What is your advice for students, especially high schoolers, as they plan to go back to school? What should they want to accomplish and develop during this difficult time for all of us?
Well, I think that it's going to be. See, the one thing that I don't like about the time that we're in is the inability to see people in person, right? In other words, to me, like this is not a substitute for us sitting at Sayreville High School and my coming in and actually talking to you in person. And so I think the most important thing is that because of social distancing, and I don't even know whether you're going to, many of you may be for the whole next fall, may be going to school virtually and just having classes totally online or mostly online. And I think that you kind of have to figure out how to kind of stay in touch and do the things that are that keep those kind of personal ties. So, I think like something like what you're doing with the with this career and technical student organization is very important. But I mean, it's got to be hard. Like there's probably not a lot of athletic programs will disappear. Arts and cultural clubs, may disappear. So, if there is I don't know, public speaking and debating society, I think of that because as a politician, we debate. If there's a public speaking and debating society, for example, and you can't actually have a debate in person or do some kind of public speaking in person, then at least try to do it online so you keep it going. You probably detected when I was talking about community organizations and a lot of them kind of disappearing because people don't even want to be involved anymore. I worry about those after school activities, which when I was in high school were very important. I mean, I was involved in the student government. I was involved in the public speaking and debating society, for example. And I would hate to see those things disappear. So, to the extent that you can keep those things going and figure out how to do them virtually or whatever, I think that's very important. So it's not just a question of, taking courses online and, that's it. Because a high school experience as well as a college experience, all these things that are not part of the actual instruction are very important. and it's going to be hard, but try to figure out ways to do it, to keep it going.
I know that Neve said that that was the final question. We have another question right here, and I know being mindful of your time, and I know that you're on your August
I can take another question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know you're on your vacation, so we appreciate your time.
It's not a vacation, believe me.
So, what do you? What's your piece of advice? What's your spiel for those people, whether they be voters or rank and file members of some organizations, who feel that their voice doesn't matter?
That's the worst thing that could happen, to be honest. That's my greatest fear, that people feel that their voice doesn't matter. And of course, that's primarily being a politician. I worry about it politically, but I worry about it in every way. And, that's part of the reason why I think people have lost faith in institutions, whether it be a religious institution, a Lions Club, or, or a democratic society, because they don't think people care about their view. I don't know why people think that way, because I know it's not true for me and for Congress and for the organizations I'm involved with. It's just the opposite. But for some reason, a lot of people have convinced themselves about, and particularly young people. And again, why? I don't know. Is it the media? Is it, the media talking about scandals and, different things? Maybe. I don't know what the reason is, but somehow we have to reverse that. I mean, how many elections that I've heard of since I've been in office that were won by 1 or 2 votes or 5 votes? And how could anybody say that a decision that's made, whether it's by Congress or by your local board of education, doesn't matter, right? I mean, right? Let's say, most people think like the lowest elected office is the board of education. I don't know if it is, but that's a lot of people think like, that's kind of the lowest level. But think about the fact the decisions that the board of education has to make now in terms of whether we're going to have school virtually or in person, what classes are going to be virtual in person, whether we're going to have sports. I mean, these are important decisions for all of you, right? And in terms of the budget, are we going to have guidance councils? Are we going to put emphasis on technical or business education versus, liberal arts education? These things are so important. And somehow you have to inculcate in young people that they are. And it's not just politics, it's everything, right? I mean, business leaders' decisions are so important. I mean, decisions by religious organizations as to whether they're going to prioritize and have a food bank or do social programs. These things are so important. But for some reason, if I could think of a better way of making people understand that, it's hard for me to understand why people think it doesn't matter, because I know it does. But I don't know. Why do you think young people think that? Why? Is it the media? Is it their own personal experience? I'll just throw it back at you since you asked the question.
I think oftentimes bad leaders, I know that we have a few bad leaders sometimes, but they don't take into consideration people's ideas, and sometimes people are discouraged because they feel that their voice doesn't matter. But I think, like you said, it's very important to remind them that their voice does matter.
But a lot of times it's because of some media or some bad experience that gets publicized, and it really doesn't, it's not true of the organization itself. Do you know what I mean? But so I do think that media, internet plays a role, since a lot of young people particularly rely on the internet. If they hear a lot of social media saying, this is, nobody cares, then they begin to have that negative attitude. And I guess my answer to that is, well, try it and see whether or not what you think is true, because it probably isn't. It's probably a lot better, and there's a lot more opportunities and willingness on the part of different organizations or community groups to actually get you involved and make a difference. If they try and then they come to the same conclusion, okay, then that's fair. But don't rely on, some comments on social media or on TV, because half the times they're not true.
And Congressman, do you have one final piece of advice for all the young people who are about to go into their virtual learning environment or going off to college? Any last piece of advice for young people today?
Oh, what piece of advice do I have? Try things, don't hesitate, don't be shy. I just give you an example. You're going to find this hard to believe, but when I was first elected to Congress, even though I had been a state senator and I had been a city councilman before that, and even though I was, a debater in high school, and I was very shy. I figured, I'm here in Congress, and how am I going to go out on the floor and make speeches? And so what I did is, in the morning, we had what we call special orders. Before the actual debates on bills began, you could just come in the morning and make a speech for a minute on any topic you want. And I decided that I was just going to go there every day until I got used to it and was actually able to, go on the floor and speak without notes and without even thinking much in advance of what I was going to say. And for the first few months, it was awful. I couldn't do it. And eventually I was able to. So I just think you can't give up. You just got to keep trying. If you think you have a goal and you want to accomplish something, don't ever be dissuaded from it. But thank you all.